On the 29th of July, 1967, in the Gulf of Tonkin, a rocket fired itself across the flight deck of the carrier USS Forrestal. Forrestal was on her first Vietnam deployment, flying combat missions from the Gulf of Tonkin. That morning the deck was packed with aircraft being armed and fueled for the next strike. 3 weeks earlier the ship had agreed a change to how weapons were connected, to save time.
Allow ordnance personnel to connect pigtails in the pack, prior to taxi, leaving only safety pin removal at the CAT.
A Zuni rocket fired from a parked Phantom. Its safety pin was missing, and an electrical flaw did the rest. It traveled about 100 feet across the flight deck and struck an aircraft waiting to launch. It hit the external fuel tank under a Skyhawk with its pilot already in the cockpit. One of the pilots on deck described the moment it happened.
On that Saturday morning in July, as I sat in the cockpit of my A-4 preparing to take off, a rocket hit the fuel tank under my airplane.
The jet fuel spilled across the deck, caught, and set off a chain of explosions among the armed aircraft. The fire took hold on the after-flight deck, among aircraft that were fueled and loaded. A 32-knot wind, near 60 kilometers an hour, drove it along, helped by the exhaust of running jets. The smoke was photographed from the deck of another carrier, over the horizon. The men who fought it were mostly not firefighters. The ones who were had been killed in the first minutes. The flight deck fires were out about half an hour later. The fires below took until after midnight. A destroyer came alongside to put her own hoses onto the carrier. Rupertus held station 20 feet from a burning, exploding ship for 90 minutes. Helicopters ferried firefighting supplies across from the other carriers in company. "50 of the dead never saw the fire. They were asleep in berthing compartments under the after-flight deck." A survivor described what was left of where he had been standing.
"The port quarter of the flight deck where I was is no longer there."
Crews put hoses down through the holes the bombs had made, into compartments they could not reach. 134 men were killed and 161 more were injured. The wounded were flown to the ships around her. It was the third carrier fire in 4 years. The Navy could no longer treat them as bad luck. For the men who lived, the fire was not the worst part.
The worst was going back into the burned-out areas later and finding your dead and wounded shipmates.
What was left of the flight deck was covered in the wreckage of her own aircraft. The repair replaced 175 feet of flight deck and about 200 compartments. The Navy rebuilt its firefighting training around what happened here, and named the school after one of the dead. The rocket left the rail with nobody touching it, and 134 men died on their own ship. When a shortcut saves minutes on every launch, who is counting what it might cost once?